Hey guys, welcome back to Worth a Spin. My name is Jack. I am your host. Alrighty. Today was going to be our first video where we go to what I originally envisioned this channel to be, and I would just pick something out of my record collection and say, hey, here's the album we're talking about today. There's a little history about it. Here's a little background knowledge I know. And this is why I think if it's worth for you picking up to listen to or not. We're still going to do that, but we're postponing it by a week. Or with my schedule, we're postponing it. So today we're going to talk about one last video. Not one last video, period. I'll be talking about the Beatles again. There's no way I can't not. But as far as every week, it's to be the last of the Beatle ones for a little while. So, interesting weekend. It was a good Easter. Hope your guys' was good too. Mine was pretty incredible for a few different reasons. So we're going to talk about the Beatles yesterday and today. So this is that record right there. And I think after what happened this weekend, we should talk about it. All right, this is the Beatles yesterday and today. And this is well known as the trunk cover. That's right. Because there was another cover for this album, wound up being rejected, so they pasted this slick over it to make it look like this. And so I don't have a butcher cover, and I don't have my rarities on me, so I grabbed off of the shelf there real quick one of my Beatles CDs. And this CD is from the American collection, and this is yesterday and today. This is a CD, and this is the same cover as what I just showed you. This is the stereo one. So I have 3 copies of this, of yesterday and today. Why would you not? It's one of the fantastic album. So my first one's a mono. That's the front. I'll show you the back real quick. It's just the back. And yes, this is a little bit of a rough cover. Anybody that buys Beatles albums in America knows it's hard to get Beatles albums that are not beat up or marked on. They use cardboard here in the States. The cardboard's not held up well over time, especially if it's white. Got a lot of dirt and stuff on it. I tried cleaning this, and I had some success. You can have some success, but you have to be careful because it's not hard to ruin it. Alrighty, so this is my mono first press of yesterday and today, and you can tell by the matrix number. And again, for a quick view, if you're in a shop wondering if the one you're looking at is a first press or not, I see a lot of people putting stuff up, eBay and stuff, first pressing, and it's not, and that's very annoying. So your number 1 here don't have what I call a pigtail on there, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. It's just a straight line. And down here at the bottom in the blue, manufactured by Capitol Records, you don't have the A subsidiary of Capitol Records. So if those 2 things are a checkout on there, then you have a first press Beatles album. That is just a quick way for you to tell if you're in a shop. So you eBay guys, stop posting second and third pressings as first pressing. Because, well, you're lying. Alrighty, so this is my stereo, and the stereo copy came out pretty much about the same time as the mono did. And this is a little bit rougher, but you know, the record's fantastic. It's just that usually the records, you can find them in great condition. They play great, sound great, but the covers are just crap. Beatles yesterday and today. It was released June in 1966. There were 750,000 of these printed. They were sent to, some were sent to reviewers and radio stations, of course, ahead of the actual release of the 14th for this record. I'll show you the inside real quick so you know what the original inner sleeve should look like. It should look like this. It should be orange, and it should say Capitol 66 sounds great! And it does sound great. So if you got all that, you've got you an original. Alrighty. And I'll show you what the stereo album looks like. Not this one, because that's a mono. This is a stereo. And there's not really much difference. I mean, mono, stereo. It's just, you know, stereo. So your stereos, man, I was a little off. I didn't explain all the way. So your mono first pressings will not have what I call the pigtail. Your stereo first pressings usually do, though. And what I call the pigtail, can you see that little line there on the one? That is what I refer to as a pigtail. And if your monos have that, it's not a first press. If they don't, they are. Your stereos are going to have that. And it does not have the a capital subsidiary at the bottom. So that's just a quick, that's a first press. Always verify, of course, with your number there. But that's a quick way if you're in a shop and you can't access Discogs to check it. That's how you can tell. Alrighty, so we're going to put that over there. And my third one, I have a third one. This one is a mono, so it's my second mono copy. This is pretty much near mint as far as I'm concerned. Looks great, but it has the original shrink on there, and that's what helps make it look good. The only thing is, if you look on the edge there, if you can see a little bit of yellowing. Same with back here, because that didn't stay under the cellophane. Other than that, this is nice and mint. And again, the Capital 66 sounds great, and it does. Capital 66 does sound great. All these Beatles records on here do. It's Beach Boys I'm going to pass on. Peter and Gordon sounds great. Dean Martin. Yeah, I'm going to pass on the Beach Boys. Sorry. Alrighty, so let's talk a little more about this album. So we know it was released June 66. We know there were 750,000 printed. We had some sent out to some reviewers, some radio stations. Hey, check it out, new Beatles album. This is not the cover that this album originally was on when it was sent out to them. Again, I'm using my CD because I don't have an original Butcher cover. So, if you look at an original pressing of Yesterday and Today, it will look like this. This is an exact replication, minus the OBI strip there, of what the album originally looked like. Reviewers, radio stations got this. So this music's great. This cover is an issue. This is horrible. What are we doing here? And it is the Beatles and Butcher smocks with dowel parts and raw meat on them. So here's the story. Here's two stories that I've read over the years. One is that the Beatles were very unhappy with Capitol's butchering of their albums in the American market, i.e. taking singles that were meant to be just singles and taking songs off of other albums and mixing them all together to make new albums, or to make one album different than the album version that was released in England. So since they were upset about that this cover was derived as a way to say F you. The other one is, and this is I think the more official one, is that the Beatles had done a photo shoot around the time, and it was called a Somnambulant Adventure. Had lots of photos that were similar to this, and some others that weren't as extreme as this. I don't have any examples of that photo shoot. They were just kind of sitting around. The Beatles didn't know what to do with them, but photographer Robert Whittaker took them, and the Beatles just had it done, and they were just sitting on them, not sure what to do with them yet. Capitol say we're going to release another album. We're going to call it Yesterday and Today. We want to capitalize on Yesterday because the song was so big, even though it was not a single in the UK. And the Beatles not having anything prepared, and not having the time or really caring to take the time to do a photo shoot for somebody who was not doing their albums the way they wanted them done, just sent these photo shoot, a succulent adventure photos to Capitol. They said, here you go, use whatever you want to use. Whatever reason, officials at Capitol chose this over the others. And I not ever seen the others. I don't know if they've been published, but this is one that was chose, so I just wonder what the others look like. Everybody freaked out, reviewers, radio stations, that cover's crap, you can't use that cover. So my high up, Capitol heard this, and they're like, whoa, let's pull that cover back. We're just getting over the whole John and the Beatles are bigger than Jesus thing. We don't need another controversy. The Beatles were a little worried. They weren't so much worried, but the record companies were worried that the Beatles going to something more along the lines of some of these songs that were on Revolver and Rubber, so that They were getting out of the teeny pop kind of style. I love Me Do stuff, and more 60s psychedelic trippy type kind of stuff. Harder, more, there's a message here and a meaning to it kind of things. So they were concerned about radio sales, or about record sales. So this was Paul kind of came up with a way to, this is from an old Paul McCartney interview, to help sales in case albums did start to slip. The Beatles were kind of asked, hey, what do you got here to try to stay fresh in the kids' eyes and keep these albums sounding relevant to the teen buying public? Because the teen buying public is what they were worried about. So Paul came up with this. Let me show you on a bigger scale here, so we got something to see. So they kind of came up with this. Now this bleeds in. There's two controversy with this album. One we kind of talked about. We're going to talk about it again in a minute. Is the butcher cover. The other is the whole Paul is dead theory. The story to where Paul died in a car crash, and he was replaced by a double who looked and sounded like him. And if you go really deep into this, Britain's version of the Secret Service and that were involved, and it was like, we cannot have the teen public know that one of the Beatles died. It would just wreak havoc with the everything here in England. It would just, millions and millions and millions of teenage girls would just lose their stuff, and it would cause issues. So you cannot disclose it. We have to figure out how to fix it. So there was a lookalike, Paul McCartney lookalike competition. A guy won, and supposedly that's who replaced Paul, is this lookalike. So when they started this whole thing, and Paul admitted to this in his interview that this was fake, the ideal for this, when they did this cover, so the original ideal was for it to be printed this way. So now your trunk looks like a coffin, and the lid's open. Paul would be in it. John would kind of be looking down. His eyes would be down, and the other guys would be looking forward. And that would be the first clue of the Paul is dead. Then they got a little nervous and said, well, that's a little too obvious. That, they wanted these clues to be subtle, so that if the reason that people weren't buying Beatles albums again was because they weren't sounding teeny boppy enough, then maybe there's some controversy over maybe one of them had died and is being replaced. But you have to buy the albums in order to find all the clues. So from Sgt. Pepper on up to Abbey Road, we have all these clues to say that Paul is dead, which obviously Paul's not. This would have been the start, but they thought it was a little too obvious, so we flipped it up this way and we went on because, well, we had enough problems with this album. So what was our solution to this when reviewers and radio stations freaked out? So Capitol sent a letter. Hey, there's a defect in the album. If you'll please return this album, we will return it to you when we have it ready to officially be released. And when it was sent back to Capitol, they had the Capitol. There were 3 plants. One's Scranton, the other was Los Angeles, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the third one, who got these albums back, who were printing these covers. And the one whose name unfortunately can't remember, decided we're just going to scrap them. So they pulled the vinyls out, took all the covers, threw them in a landfill, and covered them up. And that was the end of that. Los Angeles and Scranton decided they would, with the help of Capitol, they wanted to fix this and use it because it was going to be very costly. This is the only album of the Beatles to ever come out that was a loss. It's a gold-selling album, but sold over 1 million copies. But due to the fact of sending these covers out, recalling these covers, putting these slicks, this is a representation of it, these slicks over this to cover up the offending record, it wound up being a loss for Capitol Records. Also, so you know, this album is made up of a few different things. So the way, in case you're not familiar with Capitol's butchering system in the U.S., so they did things like this. They took 245s. They took Yesterday and Act Naturally, released in Britain, not meant to be, Yesterday and Act Naturally are off the Help album there. Day Tripper and Weekend Workout were released as a single. They put those on here. They also took Rubber Soul's Nowhere Man, What Goes On, Drive My Car, and If I Needed Someone, and put those on here. And here's the thing they did. They took 3 songs off of Revolver and that were not released in the UK just yet. We got them a little bit early and put those on here. I'm Only Sleeping, Dr. Robert, and Your Bird Can Sing. And that is how you make up a Beatles album in America of previously used material, which the Beatles frowned upon very much. So, again, we took these slicks at 2 different plants trying to save some money, get a little bit of our money back, and we pasted them on. Is what they did. And when they're pasted on, which I'm not pasting this on, and you're right back to that cover there. So, you may be asking yourself, well, how do I know if I find this in the store if it is a butcher cover? So there are 3 different butcher covers, different classes of butcher covers. So number 1 is the one that's behind here that you just saw. That is a First State butcher cover where there's nothing. That was the actual album that was released. Some of them made it to stores because that's just the way it is. Some of them wound up getting shipped before they got the order out to not ship them. So there were some of them that actually made it to the stores and people bought them. Very, very few. The numbers are not really known. Of the 750,000, how many actually hit the store, how many went to reviewers, how many were returned, and how many were covered with the slicks. Unfortunately, they didn't have that kind of record keeping back then. So, Second State is like this. It's just what we've been looking at. And it is this, the trunk cover. Third State is the butcher cover that has been, so the trunk cover has been peeled off of here. So what they do is you or a professional, and most people use professionals, can remove this cover so that underneath here you'll see the other cover. This is just a slick, just a printed paper that was glued onto this cover. Originally when it came out, word got around of the other cover and people were using teapots at home to steam the cover because it was freshly done. So the glue didn't have time to really settle. So you could take a teapot and hold this over the steam. And by doing that, you were able to carefully peel that off yourself into more of a one giant chunk and kind of pull it off. Nowadays, there are people who will charge $100 to $200 to professionally peel it so they can remove this, and you can't tell that this was ever on here, that the actual butcher cover is what that is. A few things for you. In case you go to buy a butcher cover, the First State butcher cover, so a non-peeled butcher cover. If you take a damp paper towel, get a paper towel, get it damp, no, dripping water, just damp. Lay it on the cover. Let it sit and let it dry. A little time consuming, I know. Let it dry. If you just, and that blows right off, that is a real First State butcher cover. If it kind of sticks to it a little bit and you've got to kind of peel it off, then that is a Third State butcher cover. And Third State is obviously where you peel this off and you have that. So the glue residue never really comes off. There are people who can remove 99.9% of that, but you're still going to have a little bit of residue here and there. My advice, if you find one of these and it is the trunk cover, and don't peel it. And here's why. Number one, well, I would like to have both covers. I like to have this cover and I like to have the actual butcher cover side by side in a big frame. But everybody that finds butcher covers are peeling them. So what happens when we're done peeling all of them? We no longer have this example. So this now becomes more rare, and it is becoming more rare than the First State butcher cover because you don't have this slick replaced cover out there anymore. Everybody has butcher covers. How do you know if you're in the store and you come across this album if this is a butcher cover or not? It's a good question. Many of you know the answers. There's one glaring, and I hope I can show it. Way to tell, and some more kind of subtle ways that you should know. All right, so the number one way, and well, we'll skip the number one way. We'll go to a couple other ways. So one way that you'll know if this is a possible butcher cover is down here where you have your RIAA symbol. You'll have one of three numbers. You have 3, 5, or 6. All the 4s were taken to landfill and destroyed. So if you have one of these and has a 4, that is not a butcher cover. If you have one of these, which would be the stereo version, and it has the Gold Record Award label up here, not a butcher cover. Those were released the following year after it hit 1 million sales. So that's not a butcher cover. One of the ways to tell, let me find a record here for you. So if you're in a store and they have what you believe to be a butcher cover, and if you're missing, let's say you're missing the one glaring obvious thing, and that glaring obvious thing, let me show you. I'll take this back out again. So when it held to a light, when this is held to a light, you will see, let me get a little close. We can get close, can't we? We sure we can. Alrighty, you're going to see this part here, Ringo's V-neck. Because the slick, for whatever reason, is so thin in that area of that record that you can see this through the white. And it has a lot to do with this is so dark black and the smocks are white and the cover is white. So you can see this. Alright? That's your obvious thing that you're looking for in a record store. And if it's on there, you'll see it. You can't not see it. If you don't see it, it's not on there. So, that's not a butcher cover. So that's your thing. Stop going in the stores. People are going in and peeling these things, trying to see if they're a butcher cover, and you're doing it the wrong way, and you're defacing something somebody's trying to sell. They're going to catch you probably, and you're going to get in a lot of trouble. And plus, it's just stupid. When somebody wants an original copy, who's going to buy it if somebody's peeled corners off of it? And I've seen them where they'll peel the corners, the bottoms or the top. And one of the big things they'll do it up here at the top where the slick matches. So when I say it's a slick, if you look, see that line right there? So all covers were made with what they call slicks. So when they ran them through at the printers, they would print these through the printers. They would take this slick and they would put it over the front, and that would be your cover. So when they decided to replace the this cover with this cover, they just printed a bunch of these, and you think they would have an idea of how many records they had at the time, because there's no real good record keeping back then. So nobody really knows how much of the 750,000 are still in existence. And they would peel this onto this. So, onto this, and cover it up. And I see a lot of them that are peeled there where people will do that. And on other Beatles albums, you'll see it on earlier Beatles albums where they'll peel it. So, let's say you go into the store, you had a chance to say, well, we have a butcher cover and this is it. And you want to be 110% sure. And for what these cost, I would want to be 110% sure. If I go and I find it sitting in the racks, it's $10, $15. I'm not going to make a big noise over it. I'm going to buy it if I think it is and take it home and check it out there. So one of the things, again, you'll notice is the numbers back here. You want a 3, 5, or a 6 right there. The other thing's going to be, so when they put these slicks on, they weren't all put on nice and evenly. So you will find slicks if you follow this line like this. Now there are other Beatle albums where they're not straight, so don't freak out. So, or they're not 100% straight, so it will be covered like that, because a lot of these, the slicks, they're being in a hurry trying to get them on and get these records back out, and doing it by hand. This is what kind of one of the things that resulted. So that's two things. You can always go to Discogs, punch in the number on the record itself. You can do that, the matrix number, and see if it says butcher cover, because it will. But that's the record. That's not saying that somebody didn't take the record, because records and covers get mixed all the time. So somebody could have took the record from a butcher cover and slid it in another Yesterday and Today, because they didn't have the cover and they want to kind of fake you out. The record in itself, the vinyl itself, is really not worth all that much. What it is worth is this doohickey here, where you had the replaced one over there, is what you're looking for. All right, so another way, and this will work with any Beatles album that came out around that time. If not, if they don't have that store don't have a used copy of a Beatles album from mid 60s, get a Beach Boys album. That'll work. And you just take your supposed butcher, take your regular, put them together. And then what you're looking for here, let me show you. You see that slight gap? So this cover here is slightly larger than that cover. What? Wait a minute. Did I just say that was larger? It's one of the clues of a butcher cover. Look at that. Look at that gap. Because they had to trim this with the butcher cover. First date, they had to trim it to make these slicks fit because they were a little short. So that's weird. That's a pretty big clue that it could be a butcher cover with it being off like that. Look at that. That's pretty weird. Huh. So here's our obvious way of finding. So what we're going to do is if we find one of these in the store, first thing you're looking for is see if you can see Ringo's turtleneck. So let's see if we can see the black turtleneck. So you'll just look at it under light and holy bananas, looky right there. What is that? That is a V, a black V right there. And now, though it's not very visible on his camera due to light, you look right above it, that's Ringo's face. Holy, this is a butcher cover. Who knew? I didn't. Okay, wow. So there you go. So that's your obvious thing you're looking for. Yes, I found a butcher cover this weekend. I did. I didn't find it. It was found by a record store in my area. They advertised it, and being a big Beatles fan and somebody who's always wanted to own a butcher cover, even the second state, I still need a first state, but even to have the second state, yeah, I started formulating in my mind and did some things, and I'm not going to say what it cost me, but I did obtain a second state butcher cover, and I won't say what I paid for it, and I won't say what I did to get the money to pay for it. If it was money, it could have been food. It was probably money though. But I won't discuss those. But anyway, I'm a proud owner. Proud owner after 47, 48 years as a Beatle fan. I think my sisters turned me on to the Beatles when I was like 12. And I'm 60. I finally hold in my hand a second state butcher cover. I still want a first state. That's my all-time holy grail. But for now, this other holy grail will do just well. And when you're a collector, you know how it is. And I don't want to say this, but I feel I got to say this because we all do it. You know, you search and you search and you search the earth looking for these little chunks of gold, these holy grails that you just can't live life without, and then you find it. And it's like, you stare at it and you fidget and take pictures and whatever of it, and then you on the shelf and where it sits until you find the next holy grail you've been searching for forever. I've listened to this album 5-6 times. It sounds just the same as my original stereo and my original mono, but I know that underneath this cover is a butcher cover. No, I won't have it peeled. A couple of people that I know that do these things and stuff that have other channels that I've said, hey, I actually found a butcher cover, has made the offer, and when I said no way will I peel it, they were very happy to hear that. Because though you can get them peeled, here's the problem. Everybody's peeling them because everybody wants this cover, and this is so much more rare, or is it, than this. And everyone wants this hanging on their wall and say, I have an original butcher cover. But here's the thing. Everybody's doing that. So now our supply of these is dwindling smaller and smaller every year. So the point will come, and it may not be for several years yet, to where we don't have these anymore because everybody has paid somebody, or they have taken the time, the hours and hours it takes to make it back into this again. So now this becomes far more valuable than this does, because these are more common than this is. So if you find one, don't peel it. Don't peel it. Wait until you find, at least, if I found a second one of these, like if I found it, not what I paid for this, if I found it in a record store, 10, 15, 20 bucks, and they got it out there and they don't know. I have guys that, I can't search all day for, butcher covers. They come in, I'll take a quick look, or I don't even do that. I just flip through and I process the records. Because running a record store is a little busier than you think, and if you sit there and you spend all day looking for all these defects and all these certain things on records, all your time's ate up on 2-3 records, and you're not getting anything done. So if I found another one of these in the wild, a reasonable price, 20 bucks, 15 bucks, 50 bucks, I would have it peeled so that I would have both. Because I think my chances of ever finding this are pretty much slim to none, which I thought that was this. So I'm very blessed and lucky here on this one to have this. But yeah, this is awesome. So that was part of my big weekend, was finding a second state butcher cover. So I now own one of those. That's why we had to do another video on the Beatles today and talk about yesterday and today. Other than the fact of, is this worth the album? Is this album worth your money and time? If it's a butcher cover or not, it is. Look at that track list. Some of the greatest Beatles songs of all time. I can say that about every album, but look what's on there. Yesterday, We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper, Nowhere Man. We're talking the big hitters here that people love so much. So yeah, butcher cover, owner of a second state butcher cover. I love you, butcher cover. There's a special place for it. So it's in my regular Beatle albums. That's a special place. So there you go. That's it. Found one. So happy. Very happy. Yes. Still want to obtain this. Happy with a peeled third state. I'll take that. But I'm happy with the way that it is. It's awesome to own. It's great to have. And like I said, if you find one, don't peel it. Don't. Dude, telling you, it's going to be a time where you're not going to find the butcher cover anymore, the actual butcher cover. Just this. And then this is going to be the more valuable because there's so few of them left. All right, I hope you liked this video. I hope you got some informative information out of it. I hope it entertained you, and I hope it wasn't too long. I try to stay within a 20-minute range. Obviously, it's a little harder to do with this one. So anyway, if you like my video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe. I'd love to see some people subscribe. More people subscribe. Be nice to know that I'm doing something that somebody enjoys. That hopefully I'm giving them useful information that they can use. Tell your friends, families, pets about the channel. Say I like it. It's a good channel. The guy kind of knows a little bit what he's talking about. It's entertaining. That's the whole point, is to be entertaining and be informative. So I hope you get that out of this. All right, so it's great talking to you because I'm like way past the time limit, and I got stuff to do. Again, like the video, subscribe, comment. I'd love to see some comments. Other than that, thanks for watching. Hope to see you again in a week. I'm trying to stay on a weekly schedule. And next week, unless something like this comes up, and there is something I've been contacted about this morning. Man, I want to get it. So we'll talk about that later. I got to figure this out. Otherwise, we're going to go over something that I pulled right out of my record collection to talk about. And I have something here that I pulled out because that's what I was going to do this week. And it's this here. Okay. We'll find out more about that next Wednesday. So we'll be pulling something out. One already pulled because that's what magically got pulled out. I'm not going to pick. The fingers are just going to pull what they pull, and that's what we're talking about. And so have a good week. Be kind to one another, because there's not enough kindness out there. Everybody is mean, and not everybody, but there's a lot of meanness out there and a lot of stuff like that, negativity. Try to stay positive. Have a good day. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Again, if you like this video, if you kind of like it, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and next week we'll talk about whatever that was. It went too quick for me to tell what it was. Well, we'll find out next week. Till then, take care. Listen to vinyl. Listen to whatever you want. You want to spend the money, download and stream, knock yourself out. Buy CDs, knock yourself out. I'm a vinyl guy. I listen to vinyl. I think music sounds best on vinyl, even with the little crackles and the little pops. Little, not big, little. So, whatever you listen to music on, listen to it. Listen to it loud, enjoy it, share it. And that's about all I got. I'll see you later. Thanks a lot.